What's going on YouTube? It's Tej, back again with another video, and today we're going over my second to last NFL power rankings of the 2023-24 NFL season. Speaking of that, I also want to wish everyone a happy new year. First video up on the channel for 2024, and of course we ended 2023 off on a bang. That last mock draft, the most viewed video already on my channel. So thank you everybody for gravitating towards that video, hitting the like button, subscribing if you're new. We're up and over 3,000 subscribers now, which is another huge milestone in my opinion. I know it's not the biggest number in the world, but it's still another milestone that's now behind us. So thank you everybody for a strong 2023. It was great to get to collab with a lot of different creators. Great to see a lot of the videos gain more and more people into this community. And man, we're really just now kind of hitting the apex of draft season. So still a long way to go. And we still have a little bit of in-season content to cover, power rankings. We'll get into some, we'll get back to the hurry up offense once we get to the playoffs, give you some betting tips there, some of the spreads we like, player props, etc., etc. And then we're into off-season content where we'll do some free agency stuff, trade ideas, and then mostly my own mock drafts, and then what I call my Grade the Mocks series, where we look at ESPN and PFNs and PFFs and all these various mock drafts that come out, and I give them a grade, how legit I think it is, what the fits, do I like them, do I not, all that sort of stuff. So be sure to stick around on the channel, plenty more football content coming, and man, off season's it feels a little wrong to say as a football fan, but offseason's kind of my favorite time of the year. I just love the team building process. So still a lot of really fun videos up ahead. So here's to a great 2024. But let's go ahead and jump right into it with my second to last power rankings of the season. Panthers, Commanders, Patriots, all stay put. And that's the draft order right there, 1 through 3, literally in that order. I had somebody comment on my last mock saying, Washington holds the number 2 pick now. That video was made prior to this weekend's action. But man, Carolina, that's going to be the Bears pick. Fields is making it really hard for Chicago to move on from him. We're going to talk about that again in a second. But man, you can only imagine what the Panthers could have potentially done with that number 1 pick. Trade down here, really bolster that roster, get a number 1 receiver. Kind of like what they ultimately ended up giving up to get that number 1 pick in Bryce Young. So, just kind of a tough performance here for Carolina. Offense is still kind of sputtering. And not again, that was a tough performance against a not very good Jacksonville defense, too. Like, that's rough. The Commanders, Sam Howell looked okay this past week, but all things considered, the fact they wanted to start Jacoby Brissett, I think, says everything. We'll say the same thing with a couple other teams where if you're benching that guy, I think you said, we've seen enough. We're going to move on. So we got to see a little bit more Howell, but I think Washington's already set in their decision. New England, they're kind of in the same spot. Like we had Mac Jones, Bailey Zappi, not the guys long term. And ultimately because of that, that offense is also it's been a little bit better, I guess, under Zappi, but it's still just not enough. And it makes you wonder, without Bill Belichick kind of pulling the strings of the defense, 27-21 against Buffalo, what does that game really look like? So I do give the Patriots something. Of those bottom 3 teams, they are most consistently, week in and week out, the most competitive over the last 3 to 4 weeks. It feels like New England hasn't totally given up on the year. I decided to flip the Titans, the Giants. The Giants, closer loss to the Rams, versus the Titans, didn't really look great this week. Ryan Tannehill, pretty rough. I think he's pretty much set in stone that he's going to be a backup moving forward. And at this point, maybe Tyrod's a little bit better of a backup quarterback option than a Ryan Tannehill. I also think the Giants' defense is legit. Tennessee's defense needs a lot of work. Then we get to the Chargers, down another spot. This is just kind of the projection. Once Herbert went down, we all kind of saw this coming, so not really a whole lot to say about the Chargers. Jets down 2 more spots. Decided to keep the Raiders at 25. The Jets are in a tough spot. One, they run into the buzzsaw that is apparently Joe Flacco. But yeah, a lost season when it comes to the quarterback, and they actually have a worse record than the Raiders. And, I don't think Aiden O'Connell, I don't even know if Aiden O'Connell would be the best quarterback available right now for the Jets. Maybe. I guess he would. I don't know. It's neither one of these two teams have a great starting quarterback option. I like the Jets' defense more. But I don't know. Antonio Pierce, call it this interim coach bump. I feel like the Raiders, week in and week out, are super, super scrappy and still doing a lot of the little things right. While the Jets, it's you get through the first half and, the offense does nothing, and then you just kind of wither away. I don't know. The offense looked, I guess, a little bit better at the start. The run game's still there, but ultimately when push comes to shove, Simeon, the Wilsons, the Boyles of the world just haven't been there but enough for the Jets this year. And I kind of like maybe where the Raiders are at. They're kind of like a spunky 7-win team. They're competitive. Vikings down a spot. Yeah, Jaren Hall, good Lord. Sheesh, what a disappointing performance that was. I didn't expect a whole lot, but at the same time, this is a Green Bay defense that's Tommy DeVito's best game, Justin Herbert's best game, all these, Baker Mayfield, 5 different guys, but their best, PFF single game passing grade against that Packers defense. And you look at the all-22, there are dudes open, and Jaren Hall just did not see them. And he was rough. But ultimately that helps the draft pick there for Minnesota. Maybe they can land a guy like Michael Penix. I still love that fit. Cardinals up 4 spots, man. Like, this is the upside, like, I don't think Kyler's been perfect since coming back, but this is the type of upside that he brings, and this is why ultimately I do think Arizona's going to hold on to him going into next season. Will be an interesting conversation maybe if we get new intel and more, information as we get into the offseason. But this is what you could potentially do. And it's, not a great roster, but big day from James Conner, a couple splash plays, and ultimately they just kind of went a shootout. I don't think the defense played well either, 35-31. It's not like your defense was, stalwart or anything. Just kind of get the upside of variance for what Kyler Murray can bring to the table, enough offensive plays, and took down Philly at Philly. I mean, that's huge. But that also says a lot about where the Eagles kind of are right now. Falcons, Bengals, they're both down 2 spots as the Saints and Bears elevate up and above them. The Falcons, I guess they still have a chance to win the division, but that was a tough performance, man. And they got shredded by DJ Moore and Fields to the air in a game that was very snowy at the start. Like, I don't know. Big step backwards for that Falcons defense. And maybe I should have saw it coming because they looked so good against the Colts that there was really only one way to go. But, man, I felt the Falcons defense was going to be able to do it back-to-back weeks defensively. And especially once I saw the weather, I thought it was going to be a low-scoring game, but they really disappointed me this week. Bengals down 2 more spots. Just a team that's kind of coming back down to earth. Not quite as extreme as the Chargers, but once Burrow goes down, you kind of anticipate it coming. They lost by 8 against Kansas City, but this is as imperfect a Kansas City team as we've seen in a little bit of time now. Yeah, and also no Jamar Chase, like stuff like that just makes it really tough for the Cincinnati Bengals. So they've just, Chase did play this week, but three catches, 41 yards, not his biggest performance, and also is coming off that injury. So yeah, I don't know. It just feels like a little bit of an off year for Cincinnati, and this week kind of almost emblematic of that. Then we get to the Bears Saints. Bears up 2 spots. Again, Justin Fields making it really tough for Chicago to try to move on from him. Now you got DJ Moore saying he wants him to be the quarterback next year. Gun to my head, I think Chicago would probably hold on to him. I think they do. That contract's going to be really interesting because if Daniel Jones can get $40 million a year, I feel like I know the asking price for Justin Fields. Like, I wouldn't ask for anything less than that. But if Chicago could strike a chord where they get him for like 25 a pop, not a bad value for a second-year quarterback who is getting better. And then you could potentially add Marvin Harrison Jr. to that offense, which should make him look that much better. So really interesting crossroads that Chicago's at right now. Saints up 2 spots, handful of games every year, Dennis Allen has that defense looking awesome. And they finally slow down this Bucs offense that's been as good as... it's been a top 10 unit over the last month. It really has. Baker's been playing out of his mind right now. So good on the Saints for bouncing back and doing it without Marshawn Lattimore. I think that was the big surprise, right? Like those other young guys, Paulson Adebo, Alontae Taylor, they had to be the guys to step up, and that they did. And they finally had an answer against Tampa Bay and the NFC South. Right when you think it's okay, yep, Tampa Bay's the best team, it's set in stone. Not so fast. Broncos down spots. You can call it a step down from Russ to Stidham. Stidham's probably a little bit worse than Russell Wilson. I do think Russ is, teetering on the point of washed. A lot of people think he already is. I think he's definitely in that projection. There were some games this year where he looked okay, kind of playing off the offense being run heavy, which makes me worried as a Steelers fan, obviously. I could totally see where the rumors are true, and maybe he does end up in Pittsburgh next year. We'll deal with that once we get to the offseason. Obviously, you can tell I don't want that to happen, but... yeah, this is, a team that kind of made it interesting, and then I think they've kind of settled back to where they are. And let me go ahead and just double-check the record. I had made kind of a bold statement at the beginning of the year. The Broncos might end up having a worse record than the Raiders, and right now Denver 1 game better than the Raiders, but I don't know. This week could make it interesting. And I did move them down despite the win, but it's against the Chargers, so it's not like the splashiest of wins, and also the QB downgrade, in my opinion. Not that Russ is great, but, Stidham was the backup for a reason. And also, yeah, I don't know. It's just kind of a wishy-washy season for Denver. Like, they look horrible, you buy into it, and then now they're just kind of not exactly where they started the season, but yeah, I don't know. Kind of a tough year there for Sean Payton, and now I think George Payton's probably gone as GM. Kind of a long tangent here for Denver, and I didn't mean for it to turn into, but I think it's about to be Sean Payton's offseason to turn the team into what he wants. Colts up a spot. I think I like them a little bit more than I like Denver and Pittsburgh right now, and they obviously destroyed Pittsburgh just a couple weeks ago. So good on them for that. But bounce back showing there for Indianapolis, and after what they looked like against the Falcons, kind of the same case where there's only one way for them to go, but up. And just another reason I decided to flip Indianapolis and Denver, kind of like the Giants and Titans. The circumstances don't really call for me needing to flip them both. Here, Indy and Denver, they both win, but Broncos winning by 7 against the Chargers, less impressive win to me. Then the Colts 3-point win over the Raiders, who are coming off win against Kansas City, have been spunky, like I said. So I just like what Shane Steichen's doing. Felt like they deserve to be back in the top 16. All the Packers stay put at 15. I think this was more on Jared Hall. Like, I knew Nick Mullins was a turnover machine, but at the same time, with the amount of open receivers that there were in that game, you almost wonder what his stat line would have looked like versus Jared Hall. So I kind of think the Packers got off a little easy. That being said, do want to give them credit here. Packers fans, don't rip me to shreds. That offense, man, since week 11, 16 touchdowns, 1 pick, I think it is, for Jordan Love. Second highest PFF passing grade. He's legitimately turned a corner. And now I think a little bit of upgrades on the offensive line. Just like one more tackle. Another year of growth for those young receivers. Maybe making Jaden Reed the focal point of those receivers next year. Plus those tight ends. Assuming you get Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon, all the whole crew running it back. Matt LaFleur still there. Man, I think this offense could make some noise in the NFC next year. And of course, I think they're going to move on from DC. I cannot see a world where they keep Joe Barry. Because, like I said, Jaron Hall played bad, but if you watch the All-22, there's just no way you can look at that many open receivers and say, yeah, our defense is doing its job. So I think you make a change to DC, a couple of tweaks to the offense. This team could be legit in the NFC North next year. Bucks down spawn. We already kind of hit on this game, kind of a step backwards. Defense was still playing okay. I felt like if the Bucks were going to lose that game, it could get a little sloppy, just because their secondary has been rough. So I thought maybe this would have to be a game where both offenses put up some numbers, but actually became more of a defensive grind. So positive sign there for Tampa Bay, despite the loss. But they're going to need that offense to get back on track. But they control their destiny, and they have Carolina this week. So the Tampa Bay Buccaneers should be your NFC South champions by the end of next week. Jags up a spot. Obviously, it's no Trevor Lawrence, but sounds like he's going to play week 18, so not really factoring that into this ranking. And they blanked, the Panthers. And I think the Jags defense last month has just kind of steadily declined. So good to see them kind of manhandle Carolina. Again, why I think Tampa Bay is pretty much locked in the NFC South now. And then scored 26 with CJ Beathard. He wasn't great, and I don't think it was the prettiest offensive showing, but winning 26-0 with a backup quarterback is nothing to scoff at. Seahawks down a spot. Got to keep Seattle at 12. It just almost feels right. And I still have them ahead of the Steelers. I just think there's more talent on that roster, man. Shout out to, Jersey Jerry, or whatever the dude's name is. I saw him win $50K off the Steelers. Good on him. I guess it's cool to see, my team win. And Mike Tomlin, another non-losing season. It's cool and all, but I guess I forgot to hit about this on the Steelers, man. Dude, if you're not playing Kenny Pickett that week 17, and you've already announced that he's not going to be the starter week 18, I think Pittsburgh's another one of those teams that they've made their decision. Kenny Pickett's not the guy long term, which makes me super terrified that this ends up being Russell Wilson under center next year for Pittsburgh. We'll see. Kirk Cousins, I'd still rather see the young guy get a shot, and especially with that playbook, right? You can't give Kenny Pickett. Kenny Pickett was my QB4 in 2022. Trust me, I'm not a huge Kenny Pickett guy, but you got to give him at least 1 year and outside of the league's worst playbook, right? I don't know. Mason Rudolph, I guess, looked okay in that same playbook. So who's to say? I don't know. We'll see. If it's Russell Wilson next year, I will probably be becoming a bandwagon Bills fan. But if it's Kirk Cousins, I can see where Pittsburgh's competitive. Anyways, getting back to Seattle here. Yeah, man, they're inept against the run. That's a weakness they've got to patch up. Whether it's Devondre Sweat in the first round, a second round pick, third round pick on Chris Jenkins, maybe it's even just a schematic change, tweaking a little bit. They've just got to be better against the run, because they have the corners long term. I think Witherspoon and Reek Woolen, those two guys can be your starting tandem, but make it tough throwing through the air. And they have varying skill sets, but when you have two different running backs north of 5 yards per carry, why even challenge those guys? So they just got to patch up that run game, and I think they'll be all right. Hey man, I hope they get in the playoffs, man, because I want to see another playoff Geno run. Not that he went on a run last year, but I like to see if he could make some noise. Rams up a spot. Like I said every week, man, that offense is firing. Sean McVay is as good a play caller, as hot a play caller as there is right now. He's already announced he's coming back in 2024, which makes me think Stafford's probably back. I've had a handful of mocks where I've explored, could Michael Penix be their guy next year? Could it be Bo Nix? Something like that. But I think Stafford comes back. And right now he looks healthy. He missed that game earlier this year against Green Bay, but for the most part, he's looked awesome this year. And kind of another one of those teams where it's they'll probably prioritize some offensive line just to make sure he does stay healthy, but everything else in the offense is kind of set in place. Add a couple pieces to that defense, and they could be a legit team in the NFC West next year. Texans and Browns both stay put. Dominant win for Houston. Good to see C.J. Stroud back on the field. It wasn't the sexiest game of his, not by any stretch, but just good to see him back on the field. And, I think that was a good return. It wasn't his best game, like I said, but considering he missed 2 weeks, solid return. Expect him to be that much better week 18. And if they beat Indianapolis, they are into the postseason, which, I said my ideal wildcard field is Cleveland, Buffalo, and Houston. So no disrespect to Shane Steichen and the Colts, because again, I think they've been a fun team to watch this year, but I will be pulling for Houston. So that way our wildcard teams are the buzzsaw that is Joe Flacco. Let's talk about the Browns here at 9, followed then by Josh Allen and CJ Stroud. Yeah, I mean, Jesus Christ, Joe Flacco, take it easy. I thought this was the week where he would come down to earth, if I'm honest. I was definitely on that, bandwagon. His defense pretty good. No Amari Cooper, cool. This is when Flacco, 4 turnover game, just Jesus Christ, couldn't have been any further off on that one. He looked awesome. He continues to look awesome. I mean, the deep ball is beautiful. And when you throw in like what they can do underneath and with the run game too, like Jerome Ford, still a really solid player. Really good season for him as the replacement of Nick Chubb. That was going to be a huge question mark once Chubb had that scary injury. And I think Ford's really handled the load really well. I still think they could use one more receiver. I thought this was a week. Maybe Cedric Tillman steps up and looks great, but they're still kind of piecing it by committee. David Njoku has ultimately kind of become that number 2 target in the offense. But man, if Flacco spins it like this in the postseason, man, this is your like total cliche, you don't want to face this team in the first round type of squad. But at the same time, asking the late 30 year old quarterback to keep going, I don't know. That's might be a tall ask, but we'll see. Lions down a spot, Chiefs up a spot. The Lions could have won that game, and I mean, I don't know what was said to the referee. There was clearly a conversation before that play. You would assume that's Decker saying, "Hey, I'm eligible." I don't know. I wasn't there, so that's a tough way for the Lions to lose that game, man. And if I'm honest, like in my eyes, they were the better team. Like, and this is one where, like, if you look at unexpected points, Kevin Cole, he does like the true score analysis. This would be one, assuming if I look, Detroit's probably the winning side in his true score metric. But obviously it's a loss, but I still think this team showed, like, we can go toe-to-toe with the best teams in the NFC. And I still think Dallas is up there, especially when they're at home. They've got to be at home, which makes them winning the NFC East and that Eagles lost huge, because at least they're going to get one game. And there's really only going to be one team ahead of them where they'll have to go on the road, San Francisco, which that makes it a slippery slope, and to me almost kind of locks up the 49ers as your NFC champion. But we'll get there. Obviously, the CMC injury will play a factor in that. But yeah, I'm not worried about the Lions. I think the defense actually played pretty well in this one. I don't think they looked as bad as they have in some of the previous weeks. So I'm not really worried about the Lions at all. Chiefs, good win. Definitely could have been by a little bit bigger of a margin. There's still some things we're trying to figure out about this offense, but ultimately just enough to kind of piece it together. And I think Isaiah Pacheco is going to be a big guy for them in the playoffs. Like, this sounds so cliche, and I know there's a lot of talking heads on TV talking about it, but with the inconsistency out of the receivers, I think they're going to need that run game, and Pacheco is just a different type of body type and different guy you have to tackle. Also, I do think the adjustments that Kansas City apparently made, less guys subbing in and out, just kind of simplifying the pass game and simplifying rotations and simplifying the offense as a whole, will ultimately pay dividends in the long run. Eagles down 2 spots. This 4, 5, 6 stuff's tricky because Miami got dogged by the Ravens. But one, I think that was one of the best games the Ravens have played this year. And I mean, like, this is also coming off the heels of their awesome win against San Francisco where they dominated them. Ravens just might be legit. And also, it's like, okay, well, Miami just beat Dallas, so how am I going to have Dallas up and over them in a game in Miami where we've been talking about these concerns about Dallas on the road? Like, I don't know. And in hindsight, does that loss to Miami make Dallas look a little bit worse after seeing what Baltimore did to Miami? I don't know. Like, you could sell me on any of these rankings 4 through 6 in any order, and I think I'm there. I think I had to have the Eagles at 6 at the bottom of these 3 teams just because, man, another week where it's like the defense is super exploitable, man. And like, going from Sean Desai to Matt Patricia, I guess we haven't really talked about on these power rankings, but there really couldn't have been a bigger schematic difference you could have made there. And at this point, it feels like they're just telling Patricia, like, put a Band-Aid on it. Like, just minimize the damage. If we can hold teams to 24, we should be able to beat that. And it feels like that's kind of their MO. But, man, I don't know, man. And I know a lot of Eagles fans, some of my mock drafts tell me they don't need a corner. I think you seriously need to reassess that because Bradbury, he's up and down as is. But I think you got to move on from him this offseason. I think Darius Slay can give you another year or two and be a solid player, but I don't think he's the Darius Slay of last year. So I think you got to add, kind of a cornerstone piece to that secondary, specifically a corner. I think safety's gonna be fine. Sidney Brown's a freak. That pick 6 was awesome. And I like Reed Blankenship, but I think you need one more corner in the mix there. And then obviously a healthy Avonte Maddox goes a long way too, covering up the slot. Just not the same Eagles team from last year. They almost feel like the Miller Lite, the Bud Light to the Drew Budweiser. If last year was the true version of the Eagles, this is almost like the light version of that. Where it's like, I still think they can win in a variety of ways. It's just, I don't feel as confident saying that, yeah, they can win a low-scoring affair, especially their defense last month. Yeah, they can win it in a game where they have to win on the ground. I think they still can. I'm just not as confident saying it. Oh, yeah, well, Hurts can carry them through the air. I think so. But last year, I would have been like, yeah, they definitely can. I've seen it plenty of times. They do it in the first half alone. So it almost just kind of feels like this Philadelphia team's like the Bud Light to the Budweiser of the Eagles last year. Dolphins, I'll have them stay at 5. I'm not too worried about this one. And ultimately, I kind of feel like they get the win against Buffalo. I don't know. Obviously, you see where I have Buffalo. I think I'd lean towards Buffalo. The spread's probably going to lean towards Buffalo as well, though, so that's where it's tricky. But that's going to be a huge game. Especially at this point where Miami only has one win against a team over 500, and it was against Dallas, who has noted road struggles. So big game for Miami. And ultimately, I think they get it done. I don't know. Just kind of a hunch feeling right now. It's also, I'm recording this on Tuesday, so I got plenty of time to change my mind. But huge game there for Miami. Dallas, man, I don't know. I'm so up and down on this team. Great to see them with an improved showing against the run. Like a lot of third and shorts where it feels like Detroit's going to have this because they have one of the two best offensive lines in football. Micah Parsons, Tank Lawrence screaming off the edge was there to make a play. So like the short yardage run defense, much improved. And the pass rush is still really, really awesome. Yeah, just this offense is going to have to be like 25 plus each week in the playoffs, man. I can't see them have kind of this 20-point, low scoring type of thing. I think Dak's gonna have to be pretty consistently awesome if this team wants to reach the heights that it wants. And I mean, I think that's true for any team that wants to make a Super Bowl run. Like, you got to have your quarterback playing great. Even the teams that like didn't have a great quarterback, non-elite guys, kind of got to the Super Bowl and won a Super Bowl because those guys kind of pieced it together, a la Joe Flacco in that 2013 run. Both Eli Manning, runs, guys who were pretty good, but then all of a sudden for 4 games played out of their mind. I kind of think Dallas is going to need that from Dak. That being said, I think the biggest takeaway was like short yardage. Their run defense isn't as exploitable as it looked maybe a few weeks ago against Buffalo. And then my top 3 stays the same: Bills, 49ers, and Ravens. Bills, Miami, obviously that's going to be a huge game. That's going to decide who the number 2 seed is, who wins the AFC East. It'd be amazing if Buffalo ultimately pull that off, because this feels like a season where, especially for the first like 8 weeks, everyone's talking about them as they've taken another step backwards. And if they still win that division, that's may not always buy into the way Sean McDermott does it, and maybe the things he uses in his speeches, but damn, if they win the division and steal it from Miami, who has been one of the major talking points of the NFL this year, in doing so very quietly, that'd be a huge feather in his cap. 49ers, to me, the best team in the NFC. The injury to CMC doesn't sound too major. It sounds like it's just going to cost him week 18, then they get the bye, so he's got plenty of time to recover. But yeah, the skill position guys are just too crazy. And then the Ravens, man, I think head-to-head, I'd probably put the spread, neutral side. This is the Super Bowl, 49ers, Baltimore. I know Baltimore won, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that game was in San Francisco. I think the spread on the neutral side's probably 49ers -2, maybe 1.5, maybe 2.5, give a half point either way. But I don't know, man. Baltimore these last few weeks, man, they look legit. And this was the game where I think Lamar sealed his MVP candidacy, especially now that they clinched the 1 seed. Maybe he plays first half against Pittsburgh, maybe he doesn't play at all. I think he's going to be the league MVP for the second time, which, man, I said this last week, but I just love the Ravens process. They're a team that, even as a Steelers fan, I love how much they embrace analytics. It's not everything they do, but it's that. It's the year they draft Kyle Hamilton at 14 and trade Hollywood Brown for the 25th pick and then select Tyler Linderbaum. There's no way these 2 guys should have fallen as far as 14, 25. They're easily 2 of the top 15 players in that class. Kyle Hamilton's easily one of the 8 best players in that class. And it's because they went through free agency filling all their holes with just mid-tier free agents. 2 years, $8 million. 3-year, $15 million Morgan Moses deal. Little things there. So it's we can get better at different spots, but there's no glaring hole that we have to go reach for or make a big trade up for and get rid of assets to, fill that. And because of that, they say, well, damn, Kyle Hamilton, there's no way he's the 14th best player in his class. He's way higher than that. We're taking him at 14. We'll figure out how to use him. Tyler Linderbaum here at 25, and they got a first-round pick for Hollywood Brown, which, in retrospect, absolute value there. I just love their process. And then moving on from Wink Martindale and Greg Roman, who Roman I think is an above average play caller maybe. You got to have a mobile quarterback for him to work. And I think Wink Martindale's a damn good DC. I definitely think he's done a great job in New York this year. But at the same time, they found 2 guys that took them from above average to good to great. I think Todd Monken's been one of the best play callers in college or in the NFL this year, and Mike McDonald, I think, especially against the San Francisco game, he's solidified he's going to get a head coaching job, this coaching carousel. So I know I talked about it last week, but we're deep in the video, and if you're this far in with me, you're willing to hear me repeat it, and you're a diehard, and I appreciate you. So, man, the Ravens process, man, I think that's why they're number 1. They go about it the right way, and even as a Steelers fan, I can do nothing but appreciate and admire it, really. It's the only way I could put it. But guys, anyways, long tangents aside, and me pinballing back and forth, but let me know what you think about these Week 18 power rankings. Who's too high, who's too low, and, of course, who's your favorite team? Where should they be in these power rankings? And then, of course, since we're going into Week 18, Tell me what your playoff predictions are. Obviously, some positions already set in stone, so let me know who you think the wildcard spots are on both sides, and maybe some game predictions this week. What surprise team maybe gets into the playoffs? Love to hear some of those predictions down below, and if you give me a good one, I'll definitely message you back or comment back, and let's talk about it. I think that would be a really fun conversation to be had down below. Guys, I hope you all are having a great 2024 so far, and I hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. And until next time, my name is Teach, and I'm signing off.